Recently, some of you, particularly you fiendish British types, have asked me to do a video offering advice on moving to America, to draw on my experiences of living in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, as I jotted down ideas, it kind of struck me that I should probably preface this video by saying, if you're thinking of moving to America, perhaps wait until after November. Because, you know, depending on who wins, you might be deported anyway. But let's say that the worst case scenario doesn't come to pass. What things do you really need to know before making the big move? Well, the term big move is actually apropos because America is a big place. Everything you can think of is bigger in America. It's cars, it's houses, it's food, it's election cycles, it's self. Whatever size something was back in the UK, multiply it by 5, unless we're talking about, you know, that doesn't get any bigger, lads, sorry. The largest thing of all, though, aside from perhaps your local Walmart, which will be so bloody big it'll take up half a zip code, is the list of language differences. Now, don't think for a minute they stop at the American use of soccer. They don't. They stop at the American use of zucchini, because that's at the end of the alphabet. But from A to Z or Z, there are literally thousands of pronunciation, spelling, and lexical differences that you could only imagine in your wildest dreams if you're the sort of person that dreams about vocab. If you are, there are certain presidential candidates upon whom you already have a distinct advantage, so well done. But they say tomato, you say tomato, and they say potato, and you also say potato. Somebody needs to do something about that song. It's phonetically flawed. The point is, be on the lookout, you know? Know that Americans, for example, don't say plaster, they say Band-Aid. Which is confusing on many levels because you immediately think of Bob Geldof, who would probably offer precious little if you cut your finger on a thumbtack drawing pin. Speaking of blood and violence, we're going to get a little bit serious now. Now, a lot of Brits ask me, Laurence, I'm thinking of moving to the United States, but I'm a little bit concerned by the country's gun culture. Can you put my mind at ease? Well, yes, I can. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that America doesn't have a problem with gun violence. On some level, clearly, I would be lying. In fact, this is well known. America has one of the highest per capita gun-related homicide rates in the developed world. Something clearly has to be done about it, the specifics of which I won't get into right here. But, and I say this merely to put your mind at ease, the chances of being killed in a gun-related incident are still actually incredibly slim. I know that sounds crazy given the relatively high numbers of murders that happen here, but you have to take this into account. The truth is, only about 10.5 in every 100,000 Americans dies as a result of gunfire. So that's around about 1/10 of 1% of the entire population. And all joking aside on what is clearly a very sensitive topic, 63% of those deaths are unfortunately self-inflicted gun-related deaths. Now, not to diminish the tragedy of suicides, but that does leave an even smaller statistics of Americans that are being killed by other people, whether on purpose or by accident, as a result of gunfire. The point is, while the numbers are relatively high, and while the media may make it sound like there is a gunman on every single corner, this simply isn't true. Now sure, you know, be vigilant. Absolutely, I would say that anywhere you go, be vigilant. But don't let this whole gun thing put you off moving. You'll probably be fine. Okay, on to food. Raise your hand if you know what a sloppy joe is. Well, don't be too upset because when I first moved here, I didn't either. Basically, a sloppy joe, and you can put your hands down now. Basically, it's just a dollop of greasy minced beef on a bun. And yes, it's as messy as it sounds. Actually, this is sort of the perfect example of how American foods can temporarily tattoo themselves on your wrists and legs. It is impossible to eat a sandwich in America without it all just streaming down your face like tears, but just from your mouth. Mouth tears. And on top of that, Americans have a broader definition of what sandwiches actually constitute. So a hamburger, for example, might be called a sandwich here. What I'm saying is, if you move to the US, be prepared that America not only makes food differently, but has different names for it. So you've got eggplant instead of aubergine, scallion instead of spring onion, and crisps instead of chips. You've got basil instead of basil, oregano instead of oregano, and of course yogurt instead of yogurt. Now, of course, nobody expects you to learn all of these before you move here. In fact, part of the fun is learning them as you go. It's sort of like learning an entirely new language, except you've got a head start. You've got the basics of American English down just by virtue of the fact that you already speak, English. Now all you need to do is just add some salt and pepper. That was a metaphor. So, Americans always like to ask me, Laurence, what's it like driving on the wrong side of the road? And my answer is always the same. I don't know because I don't drive. But from Brits that I've spoken to that aren't as lazy as me, they say that it is like riding a bike, and as soon as you've done it a few times, it all comes rushing back to you. Is that right? That sounds wrong. But from the Brits that I've spoken to who aren't as lazy as me, they say that it's pretty straightforward once you've had a go at it a few times, no matter who you are. Unless you're a toddler, in which case stick to Lego. But for those of you who are as lazy as me and want to rely on public transportation, make sure you are moving to a city in which you can rely on public transportation. It's easy to assume that trains and buses will be readily available like they are in the UK. And sure, if you're moving to the likes of Chicago, New York, Boston, then that probably will be the case. But if, like me, however, you are moving to somewhere like Indiana, don't be shocked to discover that the only trains are cargo trains, and that the buses, if they exist, turn up only every half an hour and have a tendency to break at the wrong time in the pouring rain. Speaking of weather, few countries on Earth possess the climate diversity of America, which is sort of like the Jekyll and Hyde of weather regions, except without the British accents. In some parts, like the Midwest, the winters are so cold they literally freeze your nose hairs if you have nose hairs. Everybody has nose hairs, don't they? The summer, on the other hand, is hotter than Laurence Brown. I'm thinking of Siberia. The point is, America isn't all palm trees and beaches unless you're moving to San Diego, in which case ignore everything I've just said. Above all, immerse yourself in your surroundings and get to know the people. A lot of American stereotypes are simply not true. It's up to you to look past them sometimes. Some of them are true. Again, wait until November. That is all for this episode of Lost in the Pond. I'm going to stop that now. That was weird. That's it for this episode of Lost in the Pond. Remember, you can follow me right here on YouTube by clicking this subscribe button. Please do it. I need more numbers so that I can show my mother that this is a serious job. It's not a job. I don't get paid, but you can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can go to my website, lostinthepond.com. Until next time, have a good one.